Yo, what's poppin'? It's Tommathan. We have NA play-ins, day 1 of 2. No one's eliminated yet, but we have our lower bracket teams, or at least the first two. Starting off with the Boston Uprising against the Florida Mayhem. Florida just rolled these guys, completely smoked, gone. And you know what? I thought it would be a little bit closer. I did think it would be a Florida win. I predicted 3-1, I think. But god damn, they came to play. So we have Boston playing Seeker, Victoria, Punk, Faith, and Crimzo. Why is Victoria in to play Genji? Valentine should just be here. What is going on? I cannot understand it. He played Genji the whole way through. Where's Valentine? Someone tell me. Florida playing Hydron, checkmate, someone, Animo, and Rupal. Still no Surma yet. That's perfectly fine. Animo's doing great. I played against him in ranked last night, and I absolutely rolled. Animo's the GOAT. I've changed my mind from ranking him very low. Just kidding. He's still not great, but whatever. So Busan ends being a 2-0 for Florida. Both teams playing Sojourn, Genji, Zarya, Lucio, Bap, and that's what we'll get literally the entire way through. Not a lot of switch-ups this whole way. And it's just, right away, Victoria does get a kill. So Boston take that point for an initial 36%, but from there, all Florida all day. You get Hydron diffing Seeker. You get Florida playing super aggressive with that point control. At one point, they just all dive in together. Hydron slides in, boom, 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 get some kills. It's looking great. Victoria Blade, he pulls it out. It looks like they could turn the fight, but Florida DPS, and they use their ults, and they use more, and they just win. So then you have them pushing to the spawn, and not even really a touch on point there. And the DPS just feel like they're winning their ones. It's working out really well, and Florida just look better. On a mecha base, that continues, not even a percentage for Boston, completely rolling them, forcing. They do a really good job of, you see their flow chart a little bit. They force out the bubbles, then checkmate goes onto the back line, Hydron shoots some guys, and then that's that. And even whenever Rupal gets pressured, they don't really peel for Rupal because he's just killing Victoria. Because Victoria on the Genji, maybe not super proficient, I would say. So it just wasn't able to get what he needed to do on that character. And even whenever Boston, they press down Crimso's window, they push out early. Hydron just kills Seeker, and from there the window doesn't do anything. Florida just looking insane all around. And you go over to Eichenwald, it's a 2-1 win for Florida. Same compositions because why change anything up from either side, I guess. And then Boston, they start on the offense. They push in every time. Florida's DPS rotates around the big, giant castle clock pillar. It's a large pillar in front of that point. No matter where they go, the Florida DPS will rotate around. You give Hydron a bunch of free angles to shoot. They're just getting surrounded. Boston struggle to push in. Eventually, they do find a way to get in because Florida didn't quite get enough from their ults whenever Boston uses Beat and Blade and Window, which is a pretty good combination. They do push into B, and they have about 330 from there. But Florida just kind of hold on to that high ground really well. They don't even need to use ults to win fights. They're only really using ults whenever Boston comes at them. Like Victoria hits a Blade, boom, he's grabbed. It's a wrap. And it looks like they're just going to hold the whole time. But then Seeker does find a pick on Animo, and they gain a little bit of ground, push to the very end. But Florida still have their ults available. They just push in. They get their ults, and they win. And then Florida on the offense is just complete roll. Blink and you miss it. Boom, boom. They, again, rotating around. Hydron getting a bunch of free angles. And it just looks immaculate. It looks they know what they're doing. The players are performing better. Pound for pound, roll for roll. And it looks like it will never stop. And then the next map, this is Circuit Royale, not Eichenwald. I did not type that in. Circuit Royale. And Florida, actually, we get double Zarya comps, so I would like to say, you know what? Zarya comps, still pretty damn good on this Circuit Royale. It was a 1-0 for Florida. Boston on their offense get full held by Florida. Florida holds really close, and Boston go out the side door, but Hydron gets a pick. So suddenly, Seeker, he would have space, but Hydron just wins his 1v1. So they don't actually do anything with it. And they do actually break through on their second attempt after Punk ends up killing Checkmate, and just kind of crumbles from there. But Florida have a bunch of ults now. They use them. They hold, and they go back to the spawn camp, and they deal with everyone over there as they have to scramble to touch the point, and Boston just really struggling to break through, and Florida look like they have a complete chokehold on this series, and they just win. Boston try to spawn hold. It doesn't work out. Checkmate actually TPs the team forward, so right there, the entire spawn hold isn't going according to plan. He swaps over to the Ash, hits a nice dynamite, goes back over to the Genji at the end, and it's looking really good. Now, Crimzo does hit a window and stabilizes them for one fight, but Florida have 5 ults, and unless they completely fumble the bag, they just win. So Florida looking dominant, look like probably the best team after today. But the other match would be a roll as well. But before I get into that, my player of the match is going to be Hydron. He's just consistently getting the better of Seeker. I thought Seeker had some potential to maybe be the better piece in this game, but it was going to be kind of a long shot, and Hydron was just better overall. Seeker barely won any duels, to be honest with you. There were sometimes he was able to get some value, but Hydron just was positioning well, positioning aggressively when his team goes in, and he looked really hard to stop. Even whenever Seeker got the space, it didn't really matter. So going over to the next game, before I get into this, let me know your thoughts on the games down below. Like this video if you like it, subscribe for more content like this, because I do try to upload daily. There will be another play-in review tomorrow, but we have the Washington Justice against the Toronto Fine. I predicted 3-2 for Washington. You know what the score was? 3-0 for Toronto. They came to play, and you know what? It didn't look particularly close. It wasn't as bad as the previous one, but to be fair, Washington looked better than Boston as well. So it's hard to really gauge if Toronto or Florida had a better performance today. I'm feeling like Florida did just a little bit, but Toronto also had more different looks, more variety to their compositions. So they may be able to handle what Florida's doing a bit better. We'll see as we move forward. But anyway, Washington playing, their guys, Assassin, Decay, Kalios, Krillin, Opener. Toronto playing Hisu, Finale, Hoppa, Charong, and Twilight. You do have Finale coming in to play mostly the Genji. He was playing some Tracer every now and then, but largely the Genji, which is not really typical. Although saw a little bit of playtime last week, but for this stage, it has mostly been Finale, and I was kind of surprised because although was their Genji guy in the Summer Showdown when they made their run, and I would think he has a better Genji than Finale, but maybe Toronto doesn't quite agree with me. So Ilio starts out 2-0 for Toronto, straight up. You get both teams playing the same composition with Genji, Sojourn, Zarya, Bap, and Lucio. It seems to be what the meta has shaping up to be, but you do get a lot of variance between these two teams because Washington does put Assassin on the Sombra a lot. Twilight goes over to the Ana quite often, and you get double flex support from Washington with the Ana Zen. And while both teams do show proficiency, or at least play the Zarya comp with the Bap Lucio, it's not quite as set in stone as it was for Florida and for Boston. Anyway, on Ruins is 100-69 for Toronto. It's Toronto all day until that last fight where Washington do manage to flip, but it was looking really good. Hisu was the star of the show here for the most part. There were also some really good moments, but at the from Twilight specifically. But here, Hisu was finding big opening picks pretty much every fight, and Toronto did a really good point of they win the first fight, then they push up cap point and take the over like that Pantheon kind of thing, like not a Coliseum, but like that beginning point on Ruins. You play up on that high ground and you just don't have anything to do. Like Washington have to push directly under you. Hoppa's free to drop into that backline. Hisu's free to be unpressured on the high ground, and it just works out really well. And then it just kind of works from there. Now they do have to drop down. They're not quite able to reset back up top for that last fight, but they do lose to Washington using just grab, despite Toronto using 3 ults. So the ult economy severely in Washington's favor, but Washington blow 3 ults right away. And from there, the ult economy is back in Toronto's favor, and it's looking pretty bad. And then Hisu swaps over to the Widowmaker, finds a pick on Decay, and then goes back over to the Sojourn. And then he hits a super smart play, shooting his meatball, his disruptor field over toward where he thinks Assassin is, finds the kill on him to finish him off. And Toronto end up taking map 1 from a lot of heroics from Hisu and some really good team play and positioning in general. Then you go over to Well, and it's just 100-0. Toronto's playing super aggro. Finale's doing a great job on the Genjis, applying pressure onto the backline. And Washington were dying so fast and getting so little done. They were just reaching ults at 99%, and their ults came out really staggered. They didn't really have a good fight plan. They couldn't, because they didn't have their ults and they couldn't play slow. So Toronto end up just getting able to use all of their ults really efficiently. Washington aren't able to do anything, and they just lose. Then we go over to Pariso, which is not a 3-0 for Toronto. It's a 3-2 for Toronto. Washington, this is where they bring up the Sombra, Tracer, Diva, Zen, Ana, and Toronto stick onto what they know best. Or maybe not what they know best, but what they've been playing. So Toronto on their offense, actually a bit of a little bit rough to begin, because Twilight immediately dives to Krillin, and then Toronto crumble. And then Washington do a great job of supplying a lot of pressure onto the backline through hacks and dives. And maybe they're not getting the kills they need, but a lot of resources coming out in the form of Bap Shift, Lucio Amp, Lucio or Immortality Field, Bubbles, and eventually they lose to Nano Kalios. However, they're able to run it down with Window and Grab, and they end up winning. And then pushing on to B, Hisu's able to overclock. He controls all these high grounds, looking great. They use Window to maintain it, but then Washington are able to fight back using most of their ults, and Twilight swaps over to the Ana. And then you get some pretty weird stuff happening. Toronto kind of pushed through there, and they're pushing through C. And the EMPs from Assassin are just not winning fights. Multiple EMPs in a row, he pops it, and they lose. Like they're just not high value. Whether it be Twilight living, which is mostly the problem, even on the Ana now, where you have less survivability, he's still living well. And Toronto ended up capping with 0.5 seconds, which could have been critical if Washington did end up capping the map. They don't, but they almost did. They were very close. Um, and that final swap over to the Ana was pretty good. I don't think he did much here, but on the defense, when he does that again, it comes up and does really well. So anyway, Washington go over to the offense. You get the Sojourn coming up from Decay, and Cali just going over to the Zarya, and Hoppa just gets blown up on A, and they just kind of get rolled. And then they hold fight on B. It looks pretty good, but Washington get the better trades. Hoppa ends up dying, Kalios ends up living, so they cap B more or less pretty well as well. And Hoppa just keeps on dying really early, dying first, and Washington's kind of rolling this into what looks like a pretty easy cap. But Toronto's able to come out. They hit the Graviton Surge, they hit the beat. Twilight goes over the Ana and hits every shot you need. He hits the sleep darts on the correct targets. There's someone on May for some reason. Oh, that was on the offense. There was someone on May, I believe. I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, he comes out on the Ana. He hits the nades he needs. He hits the final blows he needs. He's putting out damage, putting out healing, hitting good sleep darts, and he kind of turns the fight with help with the grab and beat. And then Toronto's able to stagger out their ults. Finale's able to get a nice win with a Raw Blade. The clock's ticking down. There's an EMP to come out, but it just doesn't. And Washington do not cap. Then we move over to Dorado. 3-2 for Toronto once again. And you get Washington once again on the Somber Tracer D.Va Zenana. Toronto this time, they are playing Brig instead of Lucio, which I kind of like for Dorado. We've seen that around. You control those high grounds really well. You don't really need the speed boost whenever you're playing the Zarya on the high ground, because you don't need to speed the Zarya in, that she already has that solid positioning that gives her the edge, and it works out pretty well. Anyway, on Washington's offense, it's standard Toronto holding pretty well on Dorado B. We've seen it ever since that Ashe on the Junker Queen meta. It's looked really good. And they do a great job of disrupting wherever Washington looks to rotate. They try to rotate up through the coast, up around the Mega. No, they get stopped early. Doesn't really work. Eventually, they are able to rotate up the left high ground, and you put a nano on the Krillin, which pushes right through the BAP window. And then they keep on pushing there. EMP comes out to recontest. Finally, a good EMP from Assassin, and they just kind of go, they pull through. But Toronto's able to stabilize. They do use a lot of ults. They use 3 compared to just Washington using Trank to stabilize, but it's definitely worth it. Because you control that high ground. Controlling that initial high ground on B is so worth committing ults. It doesn't matter if you had a disadvantage, because you're at such a high positional advantage. That just kind of works out. Anyway, Washington do a great job on this point after a little bit. They do take a lot of angles, split up wherever Toronto needs to go. Hoppa can't be everywhere at once, especially on the Zarya. And they take good angles around them. Then they find a sleep on the Hoppa. A good EMP comes out again, and they end up capping B. But it did take them a while to do that, so now they're not quite... They're running out of time, basically. So you get Hoppa going over to the D.Va, and Twilight actually breaks up the Zenyatta's for a Zen Brig, and Toronto hit a really great dive and used Rally in a fight to stabilize on C, and then Finale hits an immaculate Pulse Bomb, 2k before the final fight even begins, so Washington have the ult advantage, they have the EMP, but they're unable to get a chance to use them because of that Pulse Bomb going so fast. And honestly, Kalios probably should have ate that Pulse Bomb. And Washington should have been able to come out with their EMP and win that fight and continue to push, maybe even complete the map. But he didn't. Like that should have been a textbook eat. Maybe it wasn't all tracked. Who knows what happened? I thought he should have ate that one. But anyway, Toronto hold them around that bridge area on C. Then you get Toronto's offense. You can put Finale over to the Genji, Chorong over onto the Lucio because you don't have that high ground anymore. And they run out. They TP up to the high ground. Kalios boops Hoppa, unfortunately, so he ends up falling. And that doesn't really work. Then Toronto try to rotate to the high ground, but Finale dies once, swaps the Tracer, dies again, and dies again. Finale just gets rolled 3 times in a row, completely. And it's like, they need some sort of pressure from a Tracer, from a Genji, from anyone, but he's just not there. Eventually, they're able to rotate through. They end up catching Opener with a grab before he's able to rotate away from the high ground. That's part of the reason why the Lucio is so valuable. You get no speed boost for your Ana. So they just feed onto the Ana. The grab comes out. The Trank, even though it's up, isn't able to get there in time. And it doesn't even get used because it just wasn't going to happen. And so they break through there. And then they cap out A by having a poor EMP from Assassin, which just get immediately cut by Hisu. in his overclock, and Toronto cap A, and they just run it. They run it low ground, actually. They end up rotating through the bank, catching the Washington supports. Again, that speed boost really working out for Toronto. All the while, the card is just pushing, and Washington basically didn't contest at all on B. And then on C, Assassin dies with EMP again. There's just no way for Washington to engage now. Toronto end up capping it and win. It's just a really great job from Toronto and a poor job from Washington just not being able to keep up with the tempo or not being able to play fast enough with the Sombra, which a lot of teams have shifted away from for that reason, I suspect. And Toronto ended up making a pretty decisive 3-0 victory that makes you a little bit concerned of who is actually making it in. It does look like Washington is not going to from this performance, and it looks like Toronto and Florida probably should, but we'll see what Washington and Boston end up cooking tomorrow. So, player of the match for me, it's going to be Twilight. I thought he was looking so well on the map. I thought the on picks that he came out whenever it looked like a little more dicey for Toronto paid dividends in the end. And even on that Zenyatta, he didn't do a ton on the Zenyatta. It wasn't very there. He wasn't on it for very long, but it still looked really good. And just the value he was getting without getting any peel either. Like, he was just living so much. There were times where I'm like, he should not be dead here. Or he should be dead here. He should just be dead. But the jumping, the damage, it all looks great. It could have went to Hisu just as easily for being Hisu. Arguably, it should have, but I want to give Twilight some love, so I'm going with Twilight. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and deuces.